Hey everyone, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. This is update number 12 of my HO scale layout. I got a few things done and I wanted to make sure I got it on video. The last video basically ended in this section here. So right at this joint, that's as far as the track went. And of course, you know, when you're building a layout, as you're going, things run out, material, track, you know, things that you need, screws. So that's been kind of like a rotating thing for me, where like when I run out of track, I have other material, but then when I get the track, then I run out of Homasote or I run out of screws or whatever it is, or wood. So I've been kind of going back and forth. That's why it's tricky to keep this thing going. But I think right now I'm pretty good. I have my track here. That should get me through the next few sections. I have more coming and a few more turnouts, which also kind of make you slow down when you don't have the right turnouts. And I also cut a bunch of Homasote and bought a few more pieces of wood. So that should get me through. Anyways, so what I did here, as you can see, the train is sitting on this track, which would be the main of this, what will be eventually a siding. You can't see the siding because the divergent track is behind it. So here's the turnout. Divergent track is behind. And I got a little bit, you know, going just to see the spacing, and then now I have to just complete it all the way through. But the reason why I have the train sitting here is because I wanted to get an idea of what size train I could actually fit into this siding. And I think this is going to be the smaller of the sidings that I have. So right now I have approximately 30 cars in here. They're not all like, you know, large cars, but I have some long ones and some short ones. So I guess if you kind of average it, it's about 30 cars. I don't think I'm going to be running 30 car trains often unless I can, but I'll probably be more like 20 or 25, at least for the dodging trains. The unit trains, I could run up to 50 cars or whatever and not worry about it because they're going to get priority anyway. But I needed to know how much I could stick into the siding. The only reason I have this block here is just to, in case any of this comes undone, any cars uncouple, I just don't want the cars to start rolling downhill like 1,000 miles per hour and eventually fly off the track. So that's a safety for now. So basically this whole section, which I explained in the last video, is an incline to the second level. And it's not that it's an incline to the second level, but it gets you up to the height that I want at the second level. What I have done is I've decided to basically, once the train exits the tunnel, which will be here, it'll still be one basically big level, and then the fascia is going to come up, and then this is where the second actual benchwork, you know, will be. So you'll see a separate fascia here and then here. This way I can put industries and other scenes down there, and still have like a very narrow kind of fascia going through. So yes, it'll be climbing, but at the same time you'll have enough clearance at the bottom to set a few scenes. And I'll probably set them forward so that, you know, so that I don't have to be reaching back there. You know, the back will probably be more like trees and, you know, stuff like that. So I'm happy about that because I was able to get, you know, a pretty big train in here. You know, being new to HO, I'm still kind of gauging. It's hard to gauge things because when I was in N scale, you could have, you know, half of this and have a tremendous siding. So I'm still kind of getting used to the sizes of things here. One other thing I had to do here is I made a dumb mistake of putting the 2x4 here too high. So it was sticking up about, you know, a ½ inch from the cork, and I didn't want the trains to be hitting that. So what I did is I just kind of like very sloppily trimmed off some of the stuff. It was kind of hard to do. I had to take a circular saw and just, you know, cut a groove first, which got crooked anyway. And then I had to come in with an oscillating saw and just kind of like, you know, chop away at it. So, but at least I have enough of a slope here where I can make a hill and it'll look natural. And the train can just, you know, go through without any problems, without any obstructions. One other thing before I move on to the other side is that originally when I set all of this up, I didn't know what kind of cars, well, let me put it this way. I wasn't going to run extremely long cars. So I set everything at 2-inch spacing between track and track because it takes so much Homasote. You know, this is 8 pieces of Homasote to get that distance. So it's a lot of weight and it's a lot of material. So I figured, you know, I'm gonna make it as small as I can make it and still make it kind of, you know, look okay. But then I decided, you know, of course, changing plans, I decided I was gonna get longer cars. So now I am going to be running long equipment, and I'll talk about that later. But anyways, the point is that I needed a bigger spacing between the 2 tracks. So what I did, and I've done this in the past with even my N-scale layout, is I kicked the track all the way to the edge before it starts to do the 45-degree angle here. And I did the same thing on the other side. So what that gives me is an extra like 1/2 inch. So now it's at 2.5, which is plenty of clearance for long equipment, especially when you get to the turns over there. And the turns aren't super tight, so you know they won't kick in if you have like long equipment on the siding. It won't kick in as bad as when you have like a really tight curve. So that's the plan. So I basically, you know, obviously I'm going to echo that all the way through until I get here, and this is where the siding ends at this curved turnout here, which I just have temporarily, you know, screwed in there just to have some kind of reference as to where the track should have been. So this is glued down, but this is not. You know, so I have to adjust that a little bit just to get that there, and then once I install this turnout, then I'll be able to start the track work on the siding. The other thing is that I'm waiting for turnouts because I'm putting a turnout somewhere in this beginning of the siding here. Because even though this is the fault point here, this is where I'm going to put the signal basically. I do want an industry to be able to go in this way and have a long lead before it hits the actual facility back there. And obviously, you know, maybe another siding or an extra track there so it could do drilling, you know, switch out empties for full and stuff like that. But that has to all be dictated by, you know, when I get the turnout and this connection here. So when I get that, hopefully that'll work out nicely. I can still keep a train in the siding up to here, like I said, about 30 cars, and be drilling with the other train, you know, backing up this way. So that should work out. I think that's pretty much it as far as what's going on this side of the layout. On the other side, what I did is I actually started to work on the bench work for, you know, that side of the room. So in case you haven't seen my other videos, the plan is that, you know, when you're upstairs and you're looking down into the basement, my wife does not want to see, you know, all these tracks kind of sitting there. So my plan is to somehow either with like a piece of sheetrock or some kind of panel cover that. So this little area here in front of the stairs, which is not a lot, it's just basically from here to where it starts again, is going to be completely covered. So it's almost like you're going from one place to another through some kind of tunnel. But this way there's going to be a nice clean, you know, surface here, and you don't have to look at all these tracks and wires and things that are going to be under there. So once I get everything done, I'll conceal it. And I got to see how I can do it so that I can remove it if I need to. I don't think there's going to be any problems because it's just going to be single track, and I'm going to make sure the track work is like perfect. This way, you know, I don't have to deal with turnouts and potential derailments inside that. But we'll work on that later on, obviously. Getting back to this, what I did is, in order to get to that side, I basically just built a spline just like I did with these, the same, so that the thickness would be the distance away from the wall would be the same. The only thing is though, I want the upper deck to be at 20 inches. And I'll explain to you why, because there's something on the other side that affects that. And over here, it's at 17 and a half, it's almost 18 inches here. So what I did is I created the difference by making this spline with a slight increase. I got plenty of room, so it's barely 2%. And I got it up to the 20-inch mark, which is what this cleat is dictating here. So this entire section is at 20 inches, and it'll continue at 20 inches all the way around, because I wanted this to be a very flat section, because there's going to be industries on this side of the track and over there and over here. I'm going to make this as industrial as possible with a lot of spurs. And I also wanted to have a section where you could just highball it, without having to worry about inclines and stuff like that. So there's going to be a double track that's going to start here. So I ordered a number 8. This way I can take it at high speeds. And I know it should be a number 10 really, but number 8 I think is smooth enough where it won't kick the train out like a number 6. So the number 8 will sit here somewhere and it'll open up. So right now I'm working on getting the right amount of strips for the spline here. And I'm gonna do it the same way I did it back there with the siding, where I kicked the track over to one side and over to the other side with the cork on top. So it'll be the same amount of spline sections. So right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I need 8. So it'll be 2 more, which will take me out to about here. And that'll carry it all the way through. Now I've been using this technique where I set a cleat, and from there everything is kind of tied into the cleat, but I make sure the cleat is super strong with the studs and very, very stiff. And then I brace it with little blocks like this, so it's as streamlined as possible. So when you look at it this way, you don't see like L brackets and things sticking out. Now over here, what I planned on doing is getting the track work or the mains on the back side of the seam for 2 reasons. Number one, if I'm working on the industries on this side, the spurs and changing and reaching in, I don't want the train to hit my hand when it's going by. So if it was on the outside, it would be a pain in the butt because I'd have to reach in, especially on an upper level. So what I did is I kicked out the seam with this other cleat here, and I made it curved on purpose so that it looks like a nice like a nice run until it straightens out over there. But it's about 4 inches or a little more off the wall, which allows me to put scenery here, like a little hill and trees and things, without having to force it. And, so it looks, so that it blends into the photo backdrops, which I'll eventually have back there. And then I was just testing out because, since there's gonna be hills there anyway, and it's gonna be covered, I could do L brackets like that if I need even more stiffness. That I could do because I could cover it with a hill just like that, and you won't even see those. That's what I did there. And also I left, some gaps under so you can get wiring and anything necessary through there. Then what's going to happen after I get the 8 sections of spline is that's where I'm going to tie in the rest of the seam. And then I'll have, longer supports, the same thickness, so, they'll match, but there'll be longer supports that'll support from under. Now this is not going to be heavy because it's just going to be, styrene buildings and just a few spurs with a few cars. So I can't imagine that weighing so much that it's going to make it, drop. If it does, I'll use the L brackets and I'll bite the bullet and whatever. I don't like them, but I might have to do it. Or unless I can find some other way to do it without having to do that. So that's that. The seam basically continues. There's a nice soft curve here. There's going to be double track, obviously. And then on this side, I pulled the seam away a lot more. This is about 8 inches off, or maybe 7 inches off the wall. And the reason I wanted to do that is because I want this to be a very, very large, they're in there in the corner, I'm gonna make a very large structure, maybe like a cement facility or grain or something, where it's gonna have like a lot of, height to the buildings there. The only thing I do have a third level coming in, but it's going to be narrow and it's going to be high. So I think I have enough clearance, even if I get the buildings more in front. I don't know, I'll figure that out. But the point is that I wanted to get the track away from the wall so that I can make my long leads here to the industries, so that it won't interrupt, what's going on here. And I can also store very long cars, very long strings of cars there. Now, I gotta finish this corner here. I'm not sure how I'm gonna do it, if I'm gonna finish the box and then put the angle piece like I did over here. Because that creates a lot of stiffness when you make a triangle like that. It makes this very, very rigid. So, I've been playing with a bunch of methods with the brackets, and I've also countersunk screws into the cleat, which is super strong. I did it in every one, and this thing is just, it's solid. I mean, I'm really actually shocked that it's that solid. That's why I kept it going. And then just more L brackets, whatever I could do to make this thing as stiff as possible. Plus, the Homasote spline is so stiff and so rigid itself that when you actually tie it into the benchwork, it stiffens everything, which I thought it wouldn't, but actually, especially on the curves, because it's just pulling everything that way. It's like, it's like a brace. And again, it's going to look nice because I don't have things sticking down. There's going to be fascia eventually, but it's only going to be a little bit lower than the spline. So, with the string LEDs, I won't have to cover that much stuff. So that's that. What was I going to say about the track here? Oh, I might just have a crossover here and there, like maybe over here or maybe over there, in case we need to, switch tracks. So any tortoise machines that are going to be installed are either going to be installed on the side of the Homasote with a pin, on the side of the turnout, or on that side, or I'll figure something out, but they're definitely going to be sideways, so that they get tucked in and you won't see the tortoise machines like sticking out from the bottom. I've done it before, and I'm pretty confident on my technique, so I think I'll be okay with that as well, to keep the sight line clean. And then, obviously the main yard in Binghamton is going to be all of this and all of this. So what I'm trying to do is not interrupt this too much. That's why I lifted as high as possible. And I'm not going to come out all the way. I'm going to come out, instead of the 2 feet, I'm going to come out about 18 inches so that you still have a sight line this way to the back. And then over here, it's the same thing. But this I might actually come out a little less. I might only come out like, I don't know, maybe 16 inches, 14 inches, around there somewhere, depending on how far, this sets me. Because I do want a little scenery, even if it's just, to buffer any cars tipping over. I do want to have, the yard master is going to be here a lot. So I want him to be able to reach and not have to be worried about the scenery getting in his face and all that stuff. And that's that. So now the only thing I have to be careful with is, as I make this turn here, this is narrower, so I don't want this benchwork to be, again, too far forward. So this is probably going to be the most narrow point of the benchwork. But I have to kick it out again, because as the turn comes through here, it's going to go, toward the wall, and then I'm going to have to S-curve it, because I have to make sure I can make this turn here for the second level the same way I'm doing it here. So, all the tracks that are coming through here are going to kick out and then, turn in that way for the gate. As far as the gate goes, I have some things in mind. I don't know what's going to work. I'm going to try some things and see the way that goes. I'll probably do the gate before I finish this, just so I know what I'm dealing with, and then I'll tie it in, rather than getting here and then having to mess with this in order to figure out what to do with the gate. So the things that I have in mind are, number one, I could tie the gate, the second level gate, to this gate by putting some kind of posts up and then tying it in. This way I'm not depending on another hinge up here, which would create another post here, and then that would be like a weird eyesore kind of thing. But the problem with tying it into this benchwork is that now you're putting pressure on this, you're putting weight on this, quite a bit probably, and it's never, it's going to bend. You can only get it so rigid where it's going to bend. And I don't have a lot of space back there because it's going to be a door. So, I'm trying to figure out what the best solution is. If not, then I'm going to have to just put another post here, tie it into this one. I'll probably tie it into the ceiling also, and then make a whole separate gate for the second level, and then also for the third level. I gotta see what my best situation would be. But I'm trying to keep the second level and the third level super narrow, like one track, as close as possible to the back, just to get through. And then once I get through, obviously I'm gonna open it up again. The second level is going to have another yard here. It's going to be smaller than Binghamton, obviously, but it'll probably be like somewhere in Oswego or something like that. And what's going to happen is this is going to be more like a transfer yard. So any trains coming up can pick up other trains or leave other cars or whatever before it goes up to the third level. The plan for the third level is to be basically just a giant return loop. So it's going to be high speeds. It's going to be no interruptions. I'll have a siding up there somewhere, or maybe two, but it'll be like very, just plain, like middle of nowhere, trees and mountains, and that's it. No structures. The benchwork's going to be small anyway, so I got to keep it like that. So the second level is going to come through. And this is why I was telling you before that I needed the 20 inches, because the helix is set higher on purpose. This way I don't have to, go around so many times to get up to the third level. So at 20 inches, it's going to feed into here, and it'll just have to go around twice to get up to the third level, which will then go in that direction, as you can see. That's what I'm gauging there. Go around the entire perimeter and then feed back in through here again. I cut this beam so that I can, get the track back in. And then, on that side of the wall, and then it'll come back around, and then that's the return loop. So that's the plan. Hopefully it works. One thing that I was super nervous about was that when I built the helix, I wasn't thinking of running any auto racks or container cars. So I quickly went, and once I decided that I would be, I ordered some auto rack. I ordered two Atlas Masterline auto racks, the CP ones, which by the way are gorgeous. Oh my God, the amount of detail is incredible. It's sitting right here, actually. They're sitting right here. And the camera's not going to do it justice, but there's so much detail in here. The little chains and the brake and the latches and all the markings and warning signs and all that stuff is like just super detailed. And the bottom of the car is, I'm not going to show you that, but it's really, really good quality work here. Hoses and all kinds of things that I've never seen on cars before, like, from Atlas. So yeah, beautiful job with these. They're expensive. They're very expensive, but they're tremendous. And then the quality is through the roof. So anyways, the point is that I wanted to see if I had clearance because I wasn't sure how high they were actually going to sit. And as you can see, I have plenty. I can get my fingers in there. I can grab them. I can, re-rail them if I need to. I don't think it's going to be a problem. But and also the curves are not affecting them. The couplers are not coming undone. It's got plenty of plenty of room before it actually starts to tug on the couplers and pull, kind of pull off the track. And these are not, I made them far enough so that when they swing around, they're not hitting the sides. So I'm glad I went with the 5-inch platforms. And then obviously the container cars, same thing. They're basically the same height, and they're shorter than these, so I don't even have to worry about swinging problems with those. But the height is, now I can actually sleep at night knowing that this is going to work out. So that's, that basically changes the atmosphere of this whole layout, because now I can run the trains. I can run all trains anywhere. And as far as the staging, on the outside, if I run all the large equipment on the outside, I have no problems. And even the last 2 tracks, I have no problems. It's when I get into the inside tracks, for obvious reasons, there is, you know, a tighter radius there that's where I run into a problem. But I am thinking of moving that inside track further, closer to the support benchmark there, just to add more space between them. I'm just being lazy. I don't feel like doing it right now. But we'll see how it goes. So I think that is it for this layout update. My track work has been coming along nicely with the super elevation here and there. One thing that I ran into on the other side is that, because, you know, spline before you secure it has some kind of give to it, you know. I did have super elevation here and over there. And what I started to notice is that sometimes when you make these curves, like over here, for example, the curve sat really flat when I installed it here. So I did have to put the styrene, you know, pieces to lift the track and make it look like it's super elevated. But then for some reason, this curve kicked a little bit this way when I installed it. Maybe it's just the way the supports are or whatever. But at the time, I wasn't even thinking about super elevation. So what I did is, it already had a natural curve, natural slope to it. So I did not put the super elevation styrene pieces there, because it already has a kick to it. And it looks great. You know, obviously you're not going to see any of that once you put the ballast down. So I'm not worried about it at all. So yeah, everything's coming along nicely. I am trying to get some wiring done, but that's like a whole other thing, which is time consuming, and it's a little bit tricky because I'm trying to figure out where the zones are, where the blocks are going to sit. So, you know, I have a basic idea, but I don't want to start running wires until I really know what's happening. So right now I'm just running a bus from the command station to wherever there's dead track, just kind of temporary. So, you know, that track, that bus over there controls all of that track up to the beginning of the climb. And then what happened was, because I have a turnout here, the current stops from the gap forward. So I had to run a separate bus, you know, over to this side. So that's controlling all of the track on this side. And obviously when I get to this turnout, it's going to be the same issue. And I haven't been doing anything with the staging right now, so that's going to have to be a third bus that runs down, which will obviously be its own track. And it's going to be a reverse loop as well. And I guess I should talk about this briefly before I actually start working on this, but the reverse loop, I've been asking around on Facebook, and I've gotten a lot of suggestions, but there seems to be like 2 schools of thought about the way the reverse loop should be. The problem with my reverse loop is that here's where it breaks into the, you know, the loop. So that the outside track is going that way, and this track is going this way. Hence the reverse loop. It's basically a big balloon. It's just, you know, it's going around and coming back into the same turnout. But within that, you have obviously the turnouts, which are going to spread into 4 tracks on that side and 4 tracks on this side. You know, those going that way and these going back, hence my staging. But the problem is that I'm not sure where to cut the gaps. Now, initially I thought, well, I'll just, you know, because I've done reverse loops in the past, I'll just cut here, coming off the, you know, the diverging. I cut a double gap here that breaks the circuit, and then I install my reverse unit here, which is going to be actually a what do they call it? Digitrax BXPA1, I think it's called, where it does reversing and gives me block detection at the same time. So if I put that there, it should reverse everything, meaning all the tracks that are connected to that, even with the turnouts, it should reverse everything. Plus I have frog juicers that also act as reversers all the way through, and it should not create any problems but I was afraid to have like, whatever 10 10 or 12 locomotives within all those tracks, and setting off the reverse loop, and then having power issues and short circuits or whatever. So that's what seems to be the popular route. When I asked, that's what the suggestion was, to cut the gaps here and allow for the whole thing to flip around. And DCC, it's constantly changing anyway, so the locomotives should not be able to see anything, even if it changes back and forth a lot. But that was one concept. The other concept is to put a reverser on every single split of every single track that comes through. That's a lot. That's a lot of reversing units. I don't know. I mean, if I have to do that, I guess I will. Either way, these gaps need to get cut, because I have to detect when the trains go into staging or out of staging. So there's going to be gaps there anyway. But I don't know about putting all these reversers there. I do know that if I put the gap there and I'm feeding all of this through that reversing unit, I have to make sure I tie everything into that bus, that same bus. Obviously, if I have a separate bus, that's where you get the short circuit. So it's got to be where when this flips, it's flipping the entire bus, hence flipping all the tracks at the same time. So that's the plan for right now. If it doesn't work, then I'll have to keep experimenting with it. One third option would be, and it's not ideal, but just to isolate the lead. So to cut the gap here and cut the gap there. Now, here's the problem with that. Yes, I can get all the locomotives through before it flips over again, but I wanted to run resistors on my caboose and on the rest of the train so that you can see where the train is exactly, and instead of just the locomotives, which is something that I wasn't crazy about with my N-scale layout. I could only see my locomotives. But that might cause a short circuit, because it'll be flipping here and it'll be flipping there at the same time, and you can't have that. So I mean, listen, if anybody has any suggestions, I would greatly appreciate them. So maybe just jot them down on the comment section. But that's the one thing that's kind of throwing me for a loop here with reversing sections. In the past, I've always had reversing sections that are just basically a simple track that just goes around and ties back in. So that's easy. But when you have all these turnouts inside of the reverse loop, that's where it gets a little bit weird. So hopefully somebody can help me out. And hopefully that initial plan will work. All right. Well, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And I'll see you on the 13th update.